Hey, welcome to the Exit Teams podcast, where business owners and their advisors get real practical insight on how to build a team of advisors, maximize value, and exit on their own terms. I'm your host, Bob Tankersley, author of Exit Teams, Build a Team of Advisors for Your Business Sale to Get a Higher Price. You can find that book and all kinds of content at exitteams.com. Whether you're years away from selling or thinking about an exit now, this episode will be packed with must-know tips to help you take advantage of opportunities while avoiding costly mistakes. So let's dive in. Hey, today I'm joined by a true expert in the world of asset valuation, Jeff Stemple. Jeff is a president and CFO of Stemple Kreitz. He's an accredited senior appraiser through the American Society of Appraisers and head of the financial advisory services practice based in Atlanta, Georgia. He and his group provide clients with a wide range of valuation analyses related to machinery and equipment valuations and fixed asset management consulting. His analysis supports clients in need of M&A and strategic planning and financial and tax compliance and litigation support. In the valuation arena since 1998, Jeff has been engaged by companies with facilities in Europe, North America, and South America, as well as Asia. He has performed valuations for clients in a wide range of industries, including agriculture, chemical, consumer products, food processing, healthcare, hospitality, manufacturing, mining, paper, plastics, printing, telecommunications, textile, and transportation. And seriously, if you run a company, I'd be surprised if you didn't hear the industry that you operate in represented in that list. Hey, Jeff, welcome to the show. I'm really glad you could be on because I've been looking forward to this one for a while. These issues that we're going to talk about today, they come up pretty often when I'm doing M&A deals in certain sectors and industries. At one point I heard that over 90%, 90 something percent of both Main Street deals, which is generally thought of as companies grossing $1 million and a half or less, 90% of Main Street deals and lower middle market deals that get done, they tend to be asset sales. So this topic, while it may not seem like it on the surface, is incredibly important. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. It has been a long time coming. I appreciate it. You have me on. I am a podcast nerd, so most of the conversations around the dinner table start with, so I heard this on a podcast. So the family will be excited to see that I actually am on a podcast today. So thanks for having me.
Outstanding. I'm sure our audience will benefit, and this will probably be one of the more watched episodes that we run. Hey, I think you're number 26 today of the recording of the Exit Teams podcast. So welcome. Let's start off with this one. I've noticed over the years that when business owners think about value, they tend to default to EBITDA multiples, but that frankly only tells part of the stories. How do fixed assets and tangible valuations factor into the overall business value during an exit?
Yeah, well, they're often ignored. When they're looking at the deal and the multiples, it's all about the revenues, the expenses, and it's easy just to plug that net book value from the fixed assets into the modeling and let that run. But at the end of the day, net book value is not equal to fair value, fair market value, and there often is a large step up from that net book value. So,
Sure.
it's something that gets overlooked, but it should be given its due at time, especially for capital intensive businesses. As you mentioned, that 90% of these deals are asset based, and there's probably a pretty significant basis to look at.
And once a deal is in motion, buyers and sellers, they're negotiating hard, and it gets into due diligence. The owner's assumptions about what those asset values are tend to start getting tested. Um, how do your evaluation analyses support M&A due diligence?
Yeah, there's so many factors where it comes into play, right? It can be the tax effects of the equipment.
Right.
Some owners might have a significant step up in basis, which now they're going to be stuck with that tax bill upon exit. Sometimes it can be financing that, hey, we need to know the correct basis so we can get some lending to free up some cash flow for this. And then ultimately, just knowing that actual cost basis gives everyone some confidence in what we are buying outside of revenues and people and workforce. It can be easily 50+% of the deal price is tied up in the fixed assets itself.
Wow. I bet there's cases, situations, maybe war stories, if you want to call them, that you've noticed over the years, you've observed maybe and been part of, where there are big gaps between what the buyer thinks a portion, the portion of the deal that needs to be allocated to certain assets, what the buyer thinks those amounts should be, and what the seller thinks those amounts should be.
Yeah, for sure. And a bit off topic, but I'm going through a divorce case right now. And when you talk to one side who, they have a vested interest in having a high value and a low value, uh, you know, one side will say, hey, this equipment is junk, it's not worth anything. And the other side, who has a vested interest in getting as much cash out of it, says these things are great. And so that is, that's a case where they're motivated to be on different sides of it. But the same thing holds true with any sort of M&A, that there's always someone that believes their asset is worth more than the others, and it can be a negotiating topic, and I hate when it gets to it, but at times it can be part of that retrading where, hey, we've come to an agreement on price, but at the end of the day, we don't think your hard assets are in good a condition or worth as much as is on the books, and you never want to get to that point where something like that's holding up a deal.
I'm glad you went there. I'm glad we're talking about this now. The common theme here on the show, common theme when I'm talking with owners, when I'm giving presentations, is while the owner has time, money, the right people, and their own health, fix up the company, optimize it, get it ready, for prime time, get it ready for a ever more sophisticated buyer at some point in the future. And then the next thing the audience says, or the audience asks, or the owner asks me is, well, how long should I take to get my company ready for sale? And I've kind of landed on 3 to 5 years. So, what kind of work? We haven't talked about this before, but what kind of work would need to be done with respect to shoring up the balance sheet, the fixed asset section in particular, long before going to market? And I know
Mhm.
there's only some things you can do in the final year. If that's as long as you wait, but I'm guessing you're probably going to say the more time, the better. And here are the things that we can focus in on. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all want to paint a story, tell a story about why this business is special. In these
Yes.
capital intensive businesses, it's, you know, we have this equipment, we're making product, it's of high quality, we take care of it, we have maintenance in place, we're tracking it. And so the cleaner that asset list can be, the better. We see every form and permutation of fixed asset listings. A lot of them are very generic descriptions. Uh, there tends to be a lot of ghost assets where, hey, we'll see computers from 10, 15 years ago that is not there anymore. But it leads you to a lack of confidence in what might still be out there. It's pretty common to see someone put a line item, hey, we bought 10 computers or 10 forklifts all in this date. And then when you go to retire one of those a couple years later, hey, do you change that description to say 9 computers left, or how much do you write down that line item? And at the end of the day, most companies just let it roll and don't make adjustments. And, over the course of 5, 10, 15, 20 years, that listing can get out of sort. So, that's something they can just do internally. It doesn't really have anything to do with valuation, but focus on the actual fixed asset listings, and how you're maintaining assets, how you're capitalizing those over time, and being able to track them.
When I read your bio at the open, I mentioned um, that you help clients by doing some fixed asset management consulting. Is this the service? This the area that you're talking about? You can come in well ahead of a sale and true up, as it were, a company's balance sheet and start the clock, if you will, of building that confidence as a sale approaches at some point in the future.
Yeah, that's correct. That work could be anywhere from, offering some consulting, or we go all the way down to clean sheet inventory, putting tags on equipment, allowing people to track where the assets are through the entire life cycle. So sometimes it's matching it up to and suggesting software systems. So it just is something to get a full understanding of what you have, get the policies, procedures in place, so that the next people that touch this know how to handle, the accounting process. What tends to happen when equipment is purchased is, there's some sort of appropriations request that goes through, and everyone, goes out to bid, and you decide, hey, we're going to spend $100,000 on this piece of equipment. Engineering's heavily involved, but ultimately when that purchase order comes in, it just gets slid over to someone in finance or accounting who has no idea what this equipment is, and they just take a keyword off of that purchase order, which may not be relevant at all to the asset. So um, we just get some very bad descriptions, which then nobody knows what's going on, and it snowballs from there. So yeah, that's the type of work that we get called on, and a lot of clients do see value in having a good set of books.
This makes me think of what you might call asset documentation. We just covered it. A lot of value tends to be tied to the assets that owners assume are properly tracked, but that's not always the case. What documentation around fixed assets tends to be missing or out of date, and how can owners fix that before going to market?
Yeah, just kind of reiterating before, I mean, I saw an asset list the other day. It had a BlackBerry placed in service in 2010, and I I haven't seen a BlackBerry phone in forever, but it gives you that lack of confidence in what's going on. To the extent that there's more detail than less detail in there, that everyone understands, hey, here's manufacturer model description of the assets, making sure you're appropriately disposing of assets on that list, putting everything in the right asset classes. That's the most critical thing that any company can do.
Yeah. And when that documentation is solid, it can literally change how a buyer views the business. I've been saying for a while, we're all aware of this term due diligence, and we kind of think of it as this reactive process that we have to go through. It's like a second job responding to the buyer's request. Well, I'm trying to flip that around. I'm having conversations with owners who aren't ready to go to market yet, and I'm letting them know there's a way we can get ahead of due diligence, and I've been calling it done diligence. To me, that's setting up a VDR, a virtual data room, and loading documents into it. Asset lists could be part of that document dump that goes in there. So, what role from your standpoint, what role do supportable documented valuations play in increasing buyer confidence. And maybe those valuations are done once in kind of a benchmark way, years and years ahead of going to market, and then it's, periodically, maybe annually re-upped. But I imagine if a buyer steps in and sees that, their confidence level goes way up, and when they start getting into the due diligence, it's a lot less contentious.
Yeah, no. Certainly, a seller wants to be made whole for what they put into the business.
Yep.
There's really big purchases that they've decided to buy equipment worth $500,000, and you could buy a house or a second home for for that much money.
Yep.
So for them to make that investment in their business and ultimately hand over the keys, they want to be made whole for it. The buyer wants the level of confidence of what they're getting is actually in good shape, and the documentation's good. Uh, I guess if you think of a house, you're going to buy a home, and someone turns over the inspection report and it says, "Hey, we just got a new roof a year ago." You go, "All right, well, that's $50,000 I'm not going to have to spend for another 10 plus years." And if they say all the appliances are under warranty, you go, "All right, I feel good about that." And then if you go, "Oh, the builder is the most respected builder in the area, and they never have issues with it," you go, "Great, I'm getting a really good deal here," and you have confidence in buying that. So it's no different than if you look at the asset list and go, "Oh, this is the top of the line manufacturer. Uh, this stuff's under warranty. There's maintenance records in place." It's the same thing. So that's kind of the way I look at it, and I think it's probably a decent analogy for most people to understand.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. The neighbor across the cul-de-sac from us is having their house re-roofed today, and that was you nailed it. That was my very first thought is, I wonder how much extra, if their house is for sale, I wonder how much extra they're going to be able to say their house is worth because of that.
Yeah, and it's probably not one for one. That's obviously what the
Right.
seller would want to say. "Hey, I just spent 50 grand. Let's up the offer." But we all know it's a portion. So, but every little bit helps if it gets you that top range of the multiple versus the middle of the range. We all know that can be a significant amount. So, uh, every little bit helps. But yeah, it's not always one to one. But uh, it's a good story.
At your firm, you guys provide valuation support. I'm thinking about taxes now with my CPA background. Um, you guys provide valuation support for taxes and financial reporting. What are some tax planning or maybe some reporting pitfalls that can emerge in the lead up to a sale?
Yeah, I would say that most people lean on that net book value
Yeah.
being what everything is worth. When you think about how net book value comes up, it's accounting lives are usually fairly aggressive. Net book value doesn't account for inflation. So when we're looking at our environment right now, and inflation's 5-10% a year, and I don't know, we have tariffs and labor shortages, all that goes into pumping up prices. Um, you tend to get a step up in over net book value when you're looking at it for all of those reasons. So if you think that at the end of the day, I'm going to sell this at book value, and then all of a sudden you realize a gain on that you weren't expecting, and now you've got a tax bill at the end of the day that that total compensation for your business gets eaten into on that first tax filing, and it's a little hit that you might not want to pay. So and we've had deals that get restructured because they go through and go, "Hey, I'm going to take $1 million tax hit here." We all want to negotiate the best deal and payment, and hey, can we make sure that I'm not having to come out of pocket up front and think through that. So it can be as simple as that, of just making sure everyone's aware of what a capital gains might be on a sale.
This is an important point to bring up. I'm glad we're here talking about this, the relative difference between the tax treatment of a asset sale versus a stock sale. I know this isn't that type of podcast, but for those listening, broadly speaking, an asset sale tends to favor a buyer. They get to redepreciate assets that, as Jeff has been mentioning, get a tend to have a higher allocated asset value than what's on the seller's balance sheet. The seller would prefer a stock sale because they're through an asset sale, they're going to incur some cap gains and maybe some depreciation add back type of implications. All right, back into the topic.
Yeah.
Um, I've noticed over the years there are some tools available that many owners don't fully understand or utilize. Things like cost segregation studies or depreciation analyses, and these things can add strategic value for owners who are thinking about exit timing and tax outcomes. What have you seen happen as far as owners if they found these tools, they found these methods, these applications, and it ended up impacting deal taxation?
Yeah, that's a great point. So a cost seg, that's one of those that a seller should get on that if they have a window of 3 to 5 years out. Should look into considering that, because the way that you can redistribute the tax classes of your building and some of those depreciable assets uh, will have the effect of increasing your EBITDA, and making your business look that much better going into the sale. It's not something that you're going to get the full benefit if you just do it a year beforehand. So there needs to be some planning done to it. But it's definitely a way to increase the value of your, or at least the financials of the business, which ultimately should increase the value at sale. It's also, if you haven't done one and you're getting close, really not a big deal. But that's where someone like Bob comes into play and goes, "Hey, let's make sure the buyer knows that, hey, they're getting a pretty nice set of assets here, which they can apply a cost segregation to, and they're going to get a benefit out of it, and make them realize they're getting a pretty good deal, and day one they already have some, you know, arrows in their quiver to already start, making their deal feel that much better to them."
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate all that. I'm
Hmm.
glad we talked about tax matters. There's probably a lot more we could talk about, but we kind of hit the high points here. These are matters to consider. So owners who are listening, do get close to a knowledgeable CPA and Jeff and his team. Let's talk about value, okay, and the importance of teams around the owner working together and collaborating, because that's a big theme here on the show, big theme in my book and in other podcasts that we do. In a transaction, I've noticed value is not just created. It's got to be clearly communicated across multiple different types of advisors around the owner. In your work, you've already mentioned, and I suspected that was the case. You work with M&A advisors like me, plus insurers and CFOs and auditors. How do you help owners communicate value clearly to different advisors on their team of different kinds, all these different people?
Yeah. Well, all of us that are engaged with each other and participate in the exit planning side of things and are on podcasts and doing blogs and all that. I think we get it. I think we know that we need to talk. There's not one person that can get people through an exit. I think the key is that we all talk amongst ourselves. I think it's pretty easy for a client to engage multiple people to do multiple different work streams. And so I think if we can all get out of those silos, which they don't know any better to put us in, it will be a better outcome. So when we look at a business and its equipment, uh, that's one thing and it has one value, but the piece of equipment could be great, but if there's no market for the product that it's making, if it's just out of date because there's new technology, and there's some sort of obsolescence based on regulations that we might not be aware of that someone else in the value stream knows about, uh, that's really important to have those discussions, because we need to understand the entire business, because if we're just working in a vacuum, we might miss the mark on something that's going to impact the hard assets themselves.
I like how you're, yeah, I like how you're bringing in war stories, but you're also giving our audience a sense for all the different nuances and all the things you think about as you're looking at asset valuation. It's not just cut and dry, and it's not high level, and it's not simplistic. When you come in and you do an engagement, you're thinking of so many different variables at once to come up with, the most appropriate report or work product possible. And that I'm sure your clients and probably the buyers too benefit from all this hard work. Are there, that said, things beyond our control can sometimes get out of hand, right? Can you share a case where, you know, thorough valuation work unlocked value in a transaction, or maybe on the flip side, where a lack of valuation readiness costs an owner money or time?
Yeah, I guess this is relevant. We just kicked off a new project. So our client is looking to go to market. It's a food manufacturing company. It's kind of grown over time where they'll do some just raw food processing. They're also doing some private label work. They're doing some co-packing, distribution, but they do not have a list of assets. They don't know what they're worth.
Oh, wow.
All this stuff, yeah, that they know they need to put in front of somebody to say, at this point, when I was scoping the project, right, it's the proverbial, "Hey Jeff, what does your valuation cost?" And you go, "Well, what am I valuing? It's 75,000 square foot facility." Okay, what's in the facility?
What's in it?
Uh, they they can't do that. Like, so it's kind of a leap of faith of what percentage that facility is warehouse and office and refrigeration space. But we have given them a range of values because we don't know. But it's also why we're being engaged is we need somebody to come out and list the equipment and get manufacturer model, description, serial number, condition, and then ultimately put an independent value on it. Once again, not more confidence if you have a third party putting that on there than when you just turn to your engineers and say, "Hey, can you put a value on this?" Obviously, there'd be skepticism from the buyer going, "All right, that's great." They obviously think highly of their assets, but getting someone independent to make that list and you know put their name on it and their credentials on it, is key. So this is something they need done. They know it will unlock the value for them. And, as they go to market and they put it in front of multiple people, I think it will also save them time of having to answer a bunch of questions of, "Hey, are there pictures? Are there descriptions?" And they'll just be able to forward on, the appraisal to these folks and go, this is what was just done in June of 26, and this should, you know, alleviate any concerns you have about what's sitting in our facility.
I would have a lot more confidence if I could take your work product, your report, and drop it into the information memorandum that we give to buyers. I know the seller would have a lot more confidence as
Mhm.
well. So let's you and I work to make that happen. Make sure more
Yeah.
owners have that in advance of going to market. So now you're making me think kind of off the cuff. Okay, we're not going to market. It's so far into the future we can't see it. There's got to be some great reasons to have asset valuations, or at least have your assets managed or looked at or assessed in some way, just just by virtue of being able to get a better read on operations, right? The cost of operations. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons that we do valuations pre-deal or pre-exit. One of them is clients don't really know what they have. And by knowing they've got a higher basis, maybe they want to go out to the banks and leverage that and get some financing. We get a lot of calls on that now. The banks are interested in it. So
Hmm.
that certainly can unlock capital for them that they didn't know they really had. Another reason that, and another pillar that we have at Stemple Kreitz is our insurance valuation practice.
Hmm.
And so that's one of those that uh, we make sure that clients aren't overinsured or underinsured and therefore not paying too much or too little premium on their assets. But for these small businesses, if they're not insured properly and they have a fire, a flood, an event, whatever it is, and they were insured for $5 million and the loss is $8 million. Uh, a lot of companies can't find that extra $3 million to rebuild, and they could go out of business. So
Wow.
there's things like that that just uh, will help any business and continue them on that track that will get them ready for sale in 5, 10 years from now, even though they're not contemplating it, or our valuation would be too stale 10 years from now to say, hey, just for the heck of it, we got a valuation in 2026 and now we're trying to sell in 2036. That it's not going to move the needle for anyone, but the fact that they had a listing of assets, if they had some sort of claim or some sort of issue, that could really help them out.
You called them ghost assets at the outset. I like that term. I'll have to start using that. And
Yeah.
you've referenced how the balance sheet often doesn't reflect what's on the shop floor or in the offices. You've said it different ways many times. You're making me think each time you say that how many walkthroughs I've done. So I signed the NDA, to see the potential clients' financial statements and to go on site and start talking with them, usually after hours, of course. And I'm walking the shop floor and I'm thinking, I don't remember seeing that on the balance sheet. I don't think all that's on the balance sheet. That is not the right value for what I'm seeing on the balance sheet. It's amazing how common what's on paper doesn't tie in to what's on the floor.
Yeah. No, I mean, I came up through Big Four accounting, and some of the first things we learned were why there's so much audit oversight, and there's famous cases where clients would move assets from one location to the next. So they said they had 10 locations producing, and they would just the audit would come on Monday to one location, and as soon as they left, they would move everything to that second location, and audit would come on Wednesday and see that same equipment. And uh, so, that's an extreme case of
Yeah.
where's the equipment and does it exist? But it it happens. And same thing. There's people that forget to record assets. When we do work in the healthcare space a fair amount, and so much of that equipment is mobile, and nobody knows where the portable X-ray machine is going, or patient beds get moved from different areas to the next, um, and so it is very difficult, even with asset tags, to track things. So it's understandable, even with good systems in place, that uh, it, you're going to lose track over time. So it, it should be critical to business owners to make sure they have some sort of system in place, some sort of, audit, have accounting and finance and engineering all talk together and figure out the best way to make sure they keep their basis as clean as possible.
Yeah. Looking back, what's one piece of advice you wish that every founder had heard, 3, 4, 5 years before exit?
Yeah, as a business owner myself, a lot of people say, "Hey, before you go to sale, get your accounting books in place." Like that's something that it should be cleaned up, and it might take some time just to make sure you're reporting everything as it should in an organized fashion that everyone can read. Uh, but we're a service business, and all we really own is some computers and desks and printers. But yeah, an asset intensive business,
Yeah.
I think it's just as critical to get those asset listings up to speed and make sure you're capitalizing everything, you're taking it off the books. We also do property tax work, and the property tax is based on your books that you hand over and you report. And so if you have those ghost assets, going back to the term on there, you could be taxed uh, on stuff that doesn't even exist. So the ramifications, it goes from all over the board of where it could come to bite you, whether it's insurance or tax or just accounting.
In terms of deal outcomes, a sell side deal, selling an owner selling their company, have you seen where, call it, poor asset clarity causes a buyer to push for concessions like holdbacks or earnouts?
Yeah, unfortunately, we've worked on deals where once our evaluation comes up, it kind of kills the deal, and it
Mm,
could be for some of the reasons that we talk about that um, that asset basis is way lower than everyone thought it was, or we identify all sorts of obsolescence that nobody really considered going into it. Same thing on the tax side of, hey, this just doesn't work for us. The buyers, we have a healthcare company that's buying up a bunch of practices, and
yep.
they want to make sure that they have as high an asset basis as possible to make sure the deal works. So they'll engage us pre-close to just go, hey, we want the value, we want to run the numbers through our model, and it's worth it to them to to spend the amount of money for the appraisal to then pull the plug on the deal. So uh, probably a pain for the seller. Hopefully they learn something from the process, but it's something that a savvy buyer goes, hey, this is what we need to make this deal work, or we need to negotiate the price accordingly, and everyone can agree to disagree or agree to concessions. But yeah, no, we get kind of caught in the middle of it, and I've mentioned independence multiple times, but that's what buyers and sellers need is independent individuals, whether it's me on the valuation side or someone on the M&A side to help everyone make sure that it's an independent person that's coming up with these decisions and who's working in their corner.
For deals that fall apart, it's incredibly expensive for the seller, whether it was because of a fixed asset set of problems or some other problems. Not just expensive in terms of money, but privacy and time lost. And so, that only 20% of companies ever taken to market get sold. I
Man,
say that stat multiple times a week, and I get re-shocked every time I say it. Are you ever? This is making me think of again, getting ahead of problems, optimizing a company, standing out among your peers when you go to market. So, future buyer pool is just incredibly impressed at what's been built. Are you ever in a position to say to an owner, "Hey, we've done our analysis. We've looked at all your assets. We have a good feel for the type of work it was purchased to do, its condition, its manufacturing quality, its maintenance logs, and everything about it. Are you ever in a position to say, but we think from what we've seen, this other piece of equipment or these other kinds of newer options might be more appropriate for you. Are you ever in a role where you can make those kinds of recommendations?
Yeah, we tend to stay out of that hardcore kind of consulting.
Yep,
We certainly will give feedback, and we're asked for feedback as we're walking through. Hey, what do you think of this, or what do you see our
yep,
peers doing? Um, that's just part of our business of giving our institutional knowledge to them. But as much as we can help, we will. But also, trying to keep our independence from going too far on those
yep,
those
yep.
occasions.
Yep, appreciate that. Hey,
Hmm.
as we round third and head toward home, we've got this section called Rapid Fire. The audience seems to like it. So here we go. First question. What would you say is the biggest undervalued asset type in most private companies?
I'm gonna go with customized assets. There's a lot of companies that are
Ooh,
kind of bootstrapping it, so they will build machines in house. They've
interesting.
got a they've got yeah they got a workforce, and hey, they're trying to make widgets somehow, and they've come up with a good way to do it. So they're just going and buying raw materials, and they're just putting their guys to work, and no one's really tracking hours. They're expensing a lot of the low hanging fruits of electrical or plumbing or whatever's involved. They're not capitalizing any of the profit and extra costs that you would incur by uh, buying it from a third party. So that's one of those things that maybe they capitalized on for 10 grand that they'd buy from somewhere else for 75 grand or 100. And so now you're kind of underreporting that, and yet it's a unique asset that is critical to your business.
When we get offline here, as soon as we're done, remind me about a client that I want to ask you a question about as far as that goes. They
Yeah.
do one thing and they've built a machine that doesn't work in their space, but it uses some tech that they use in their main business. And I think it has other applications in other places. And I'll chat with you about that.
Yeah. Great.
All right, Jeff, one metric you always ask owners to track that most overlook.
Yeah. We've talked about the fixed asset listing that, you know, it, on our piece, it's not as much of a metric as it's truly a tangible piece. So if that asset listing's in good working order and they're cognizant of it, everything will flow through there.
Yep, yep, I agree. All right, what's the most cost-saving or risk-reducing step an owner can take this quarter related to asset valuation?
Um, well, because you said risk, and I already kind of went into the insurance piece of it, but as I explained, I think it's critical to make sure that you are properly insured. Some of these business owners may own their buildings, but all the equipment inside, yeah, what happens if that goes away? So I think that would, act as that risk transfer and avoid, potentially putting you out of business if something happens.
Yeah. All right. Well, for listeners who want to go deeper, the next step I think is understanding how to engage the right expertise. How can people who might be watching or listening connect with you to learn more about your approach?
Yeah, send you to stemplecrites.com. Look me up on LinkedIn. We are all here to help. We don't try to sell appraisals. We start with what do you need, and is there some benchmarking? Is it just a conversation? Does book value look reasonable? Or we're just happy to have that conversation up front.
That's excellent. That is awesome. Well, Jeff, this has been great. Folks, that's a wrap for today's episode of the Exit Teams podcast. Thank you to my guest, Jeff Stemple, for sharing his insights and his multiple decades of expertise. So if you run a company and you've got assets in it that need to be valued separately from the rest of the company, and for insurance purposes, tax saving purposes, a wide range of purposes, operations, I suggest you give Jeff and his team a call. If you're a business owner thinking about your next chapter, now's the time to start building your advisory team. You can learn more in my book, Exit Teams, Build a Team of Advisors for Your Business Sale to Get a Higher Price. That's available on Amazon. And don't forget to check out exitteams.com for free resources, tools, and all kinds of content that can help you prepare for a successful exit. Until next time, build your team, sell smart, and take control of your future.